Have you found yourself feeling tired all day, but you just can't seem to get a good sleep at night? Or maybe you just feel like there's something in your body that has to change, but you're not sure where to start, especially because life just tends to be so busy. If that's you, you're not alone. And in today's episode, we are diving deep into the science of women's health, and we're empowering you with tips to help you reclaim your vitality. We're arming you with research backed hacks or help in that area. So get ready to discover how to lower cortisol. You guys, we're going to work on how to banish that stubborn belly pooch, especially for us moms. But it's not just about that. It's fine-tuning your body's sugar regulation and so many other things to give you energy to fuel your passion. Let's dive in. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Radiant Womanhood. You guys, I am thrilled for today's guest. And it is someone that I have been following on Instagram for a while. It's Dr. Francesca LeBlanc. And she has taken to Instagram to help us women out, talking about women's hormonal health and helping us really just regain control of our bodies, especially talking about hormone imbalances so that we can do the things, we have the energy and the brain power to do the things that we love. So, Dr. LeBlanc, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Like I said, your Instagram channel is something that's been helping me. I think a lot of women are, and I feel like it's becoming popular now because it's becoming more and more recognized that we've all been dealing with hormonal issues probably, and possibly for a long time. I have 6 children and I am so blessed and excited for that. We went through a lot of between some of our kids' losses. And later, kind of through research and even some appointments and things like that, really found out that my body wasn't regulating my hormones between. So I would get pregnant, but I wasn't able to keep or carry the pregnancy through for the full term. And really realizing later on, like that was the reason was kind of hard because it made me for a little while feel like it was my fault. Like I should have known, or I should have done something better. I should have, figured out how. And so, exactly. Yes. But that's why I love that it's coming to the forefront a lot now. Our last child was actually 2. We had twins who are 4 years old now, and we're done. I'm done with that season and chapter of having kids, but I do love that it's come to the forefront. And if even just talking about this helps someone else that might be going through that, or the other plethora of things that us women do go through when we're dealing with different hormone issues, that's what I want for this. And so that's why I'm so glad that you're here today.
Well, thank you. No, the thing, if you've been following me on Instagram, you know a little bit about my journey that really started with blazing hormone imbalance symptoms. And I was in my early 20s and I was commuting into New York City, into the corporate world. And things just started to fall apart for me in terms of my clarity, my energy, my ability to keep weight off naturally. And at that time, I was not holistic or even health-minded. So I worked hard and I played hard, if you know how that saying goes. And I just went through a laundry list of doctors and specialists. And I did that for about 10 years. Nobody ever mentioned hormones. Nobody ever mentioned hormone imbalances. Right. And, I eventually parlayed into healthcare. And when I started to take a lot of these courses, especially on hormones, I knew then, ding, 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 okay, something is going on here. And, we do have so many hats that we wear. So I want to emphasize to whoever's watching this, that if you're a mom, just even a mom, okay, that amount of expectations that are on you is light years from where we were. Let's just even talk about when we were cave people. People laugh at me when I bring this up, especially my patients. But one of the things I talk about in our consults is how we were never designed to withstand the amount of stress we have coming at us from multiple directions. Our job was to literally make babies, make food, and stay alive. And that was it. And now look at what we do now. Some of us are primary breadwinners. Some of us work from home. Some of us work multiple jobs and our parents. Some of us are single moms really holding it down. And it's just the amount of stress that puts on the body, you have to then say, well, what are the long-term effects of that? And if we don't have proper channels of stress management in place, the entire network is going to go down. Like we're a computer and the network goes down. So I think for women, we talk a lot about stress management, stress management, stress management. Everyone's like, well, I go to the gym or I read. I do that. Okay, well, those are great, but are they actually intentional moments in the day where you catch your head to get out of fight, flight, to get out of that state of panic and into rest and digest? Because the reality is our nervous system really dictates a lot of what's happening in the endocrine system. Okay. So when we have these, massive amounts of pressure on ourselves, you can almost like flick a domino. What's the first thing to go? Energy. Then we can't think. Then we're over caffeinating. Then our sleep goes to hell in a handbasket. Excuse me.
Yes.
But then the hamster wheel starts because then when you're not sleeping, you need more coffee because you have to keep up with the responsibilities, especially if you're a mom. So you can't take a day off. There's
it doesn't happen.
Nope. So then we put all these things into our bodies and continue to, almost wreck ourselves to the point where then we have like an SOS situation. And I have worked with so many women over the last 10 years that they get to a point where they're like, peel me off the floor. SOS, the ship is going down. So one of the things I really try and focus on in practice are what are the little things that we can be inserting every day, whether it's a hormone hack, whether it's a stress management technique, whether we're just regulating our nervous system, whatever it is, what are these little things that we can start dripping and sprinkling in throughout the day so that we can just start to get to a place of regulation, regulate the nervous system, regulate our hormones, regulate our sleep. Because this is the key to anti-aging. And a lot of women want to, kind of go the aesthetics external route to fight the anti-aging. But I got news for you. Whatever's going on inside you is bound to show up on your face and you can't outrun it. So if you put some simple tools in place, if you put a lot of these things in place, if you understand how this web is working inside you, you really set yourself up for success in terms of all of the things that come along with aging. And I'm not even just talking about the aesthetics and wrinkles. I'm just talking about waking up and feeling like you're 80 because all your joints hurt, like all that stuff, So that's really, really what I do. And I'm really passionate about it because I think there's this gigantic void in the allopathic model where these discussions aren't had until things are really going, the ship's sinking.
Okay? Right. Where you feel like I'm at the end of this rope or I just can't keep going any longer this way. I need something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where, the practice evolved and took shape. And, I've worked with women who are CEOs of Fortune 5 companies. I've worked with moms of multiples like yourself. I've worked with single women who can't seem to get pregnant. The fertility thing is huge. That's a big, big, big one, especially with women that kind of maybe even waited, then they do that whole pick yourself. I didn't start in my 20s and that's not how it should go. That's not what we should be doing to ourselves. These aren't the conversations we should be having in the mirror.
Right. And yet we do. We carry the weight of it, all of the things. I mean, like I mentioned at the very beginning, the little part of my story is I took it all on like that it was my fault, but realizing that just kind of like you said, all of these external things, and I didn't really realize that I was getting to the end of that rope where, okay, something needs to change and we need to figure out what it is. And I feel like I'm still in that journey. I'm still doing
It's a journey.
Little changes, like you said, and figuring out, does this work or does this work? One thing that really jumped out at me with what you said was rest and digest. And I would love if you would kind of expound on that a little more or even share. So what are some of the things that maybe you recommend with your clients that they do or women in general? What should we do to get to that point? How do we find points in our day so that we are allowing ourselves rest and digest?
So it all starts out with intention. The battle, I work in telehealth and now I'm work with women in groups. And I'm not going to be there with you is basically what I tell them. I'm not going to be the alarm. I'm not going to wake you up. I'm not going to be there. So you have to really be intentional about sprinkling things throughout the day. So one of my favorite things, especially for all the women that go to the office, okay? Because that's the battle, right? They're like, I have to be up at a certain time to get my kids up to get to my desk, and then I'm trapped in my office. Well, then what are the things we can do where you can close your door and take 4 minutes? And I actually have them put alerts in their phone to do something that requires no equipment and nothing, which is a simple box breathing technique where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8. And you do that 5 times. Not only do you dramatically feel better after, but the reason why it works is because you are intentionally getting out of fight flight, where you are possibly having elevated cortisol. You might be stressed. You have a deadline. The point is, getting kids out of the door in the morning puts me in fight flight. So if I'm honest,
where are the shoes?
where are wearing socks? So at least I'm not alone. So I know that I have to, it's not going to just, it's not a light switch on the wall. When we're in fight, flight, and cortisol spikes, which is actually a primal response, we don't want to kind of shame cortisol. We need cortisol because if we ever need to run for our life, we're going to be super glad that we have it. So I'm really not a fan of what you see on social media. A lot of people really want to, give cortisol a hard time. It does play a big role, but there are so many easy things we can do to regulate it, especially from a vagal nerve standpoint. So the vagus nerve is one of your main nerves of your rest and digest. You have an autonomic nervous system. This is the part of the nervous system we can't control, right? So we've got the other part of our nervous system, which is what we use with our skeletal muscle and our appendages. But you have the autonomic part. This is what's working behind the scenes, the guy behind the curtain. So you don't know that when you see something you need to run from, this clicks on. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to say, adrenal glands, please produce cortisol. I need to run for my life. No, this just happens. And the thing is again, primally, we don't have control over when this mechanism starts. So whether it's road rage because of traffic, a kid that can't find a sock, or a boss that just got on you, or a deadline that you're behind on, all of these physical, chemical, emotional stressors cause the same reaction. Cortisol is going to spike and you're in a adrenaline rush. Well, it's not a light switch on a wall. We just don't say, okay, I'm done with that now. Actually have to sit and intentionally engage the vagus nerve, which is part of rest and digest nervous system, so that we can then bring ourselves back, what I call to neutral, because we're in 5th gear. So if we can start, and there are a ton, and actually polyvagal toning exercises, Stephen Porges, who founded polyvagal toning, there are so many, humming, gargling. I mean, I could go on forever. Things that require no equipment. Whenever I say stress management, most women are like, I don't have time for yoga. That's what I'm talking about.
Right, exactly.
Great. We're on the same page. I'm talking about taking the 5 minutes. You have the alert in your phone and it's like, okay, I just got the kids off. I do breath work after I drop the kids, literally on my way to my next. Or I pull into the parking lot, about to get groceries. I'll take that 4 minutes right there and do that. Or I'll hum. Or I'll gargle. Gargling is big for me when I'm running through airports because I find traveling so stressful. It just really jacked up. So
especially if you do that with kids.
Oh, goodness gracious. So there are so many literally free things to do that require no equipment, where you can sprinkle throughout the day and start getting yourself back to neutral. Because the reality is, if we stay in fight flight, we get to the end of the day, how do we expect our body to then produce melatonin and have a run sleep? So many women are producing cortisol when they should be sleeping. So their sleep is junk. And then you're in that hamster wheel again and again.
Right. Yeah. And I can attest to that. That's kind of one of the things that I started working towards. And for a while, I thought it was just because I had kids or young kids. I mean, and I'll still get woken up in the middle of the night. That's not something I can change yet. That'll change as they all get older. But even when they weren't coming in the room, my sleep was not happening, or I wasn't having good sleep. So I'd be starting off my day kind of like you mentioned at the beginning in this whole cycle. beginning it tired, then giving myself more caffeine or more things to keep me going, and then probably just spiking cortisol all day long with all the things happening, and then still not getting rest that night because of it. I would say that I'd be like, I'm so sleepy. I feel exhausted, but I'm not sleepy.
Right.
Like everything feels exhausted, but I just can't shut it off.
That's that wired but tired. That's just that
Mhm.
classic hallmark that you want to sleep, but you can't. So then what do? We turn to screens, and then, blue light absolutely further wrecks not only our sleep, but our skin. A lot of women don't realize that the blue light is what's going to give us wrinkles before anything else. It's that constant exposure to blue light. We're not designed for that. We need red light outside from the sun, natural. Yeah, you could get a red lamp if you want, if you live somewhere in the world that's not sunny. But we have this sort of absence of outdoors and overstimulation of indoors and
Screens,
screens.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's also not great for us.
Okay. Right. All right. So work our way out of that. Maybe take some walks outside.
So again, and the walk is twofold, right? Because on one point you're getting out. So once the sun rises, you're getting all of the red, the blue, you're getting all of those rays. The red is the healing. That's what is going to help us produce a lot of good quality cholesterol. Hello, vitamin D. But that's really the hallmark. I mean, we can supplement with vitamin D all we want, but when we're making that from the sun, that's some really good quality hormones that can come out of that. So there's one major benefit. And then the second is blood sugar regulation, because I've yet to meet one woman whose insulin isn't all over the map. It's just all over the map. We're either like constantly snacking all day because we don't have time to sit down for a meal. We're grabbing something quick. Again, the intentional making sure that our blood sugar is stable by getting a lot of protein and a lot of hydration. We're just in this sort of race. Every day is a race. And we are missing these key steps in blood sugar with walking. I mean, 10 minutes is really all that it takes on a really good walk to sort of let your muscles utilize glucose from what you ate and balance out your blood sugar. If we don't do that, then we have a higher potential for that glucose to be stored as fat. One of the biggest reasons why women struggle to lose weight is because their blood sugar's all over the map and insulin is completely dysregulated. So you're going to get the benefits of getting good cholesterol when you get outside, but then you can balance blood sugar too by walking. So that's another key thing. And it's hard, especially for women that work. It is hard to get out of the office. And I just tell them, the ones that actually have that really firm 1 hour lunch break, I just tell them to bring their lunch and reserve 30 minutes to just get out of the office.
Yeah.
Because that is the key. It really is to just change your mindset, balance your blood sugar, regulate your nervous system. If they do it for a week, they're like, wow, I can't believe how different I feel. It's truly, it just requires being intentional and creating new habits.
Right. Yes, which is huge. And in any area of our life when we want to start making changes. And I think that's something that I really want whoever is listening today to walk away with, like, because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. Okay, this, and then this, and this, and what are all the things? But maybe we can stack a couple of habits. Like you said, okay, for this lunchtime, my new habit at lunchtime will be this. So it's kind of stacking it with eating a meal with protein, but take a couple of things and then start there. And then we can slowly add. I kind of like how you said that. Start sprinkling things in throughout the day. It's not this avalanche of everything at once, because then we'll just be overwhelmed and stressed anyway. That's not going to help anything, but a little bit as we go. A couple things that you mentioned, and I do see it on your Instagram a lot, and it's in conversations, I think a lot now too, is protein. So I think that's a really big one. I wanted to ask you about that. And also coffee. Yes. I have cut out a lot of it, but I haven't given up. Like about 1 cup a day is usually where I'm at right now. But I have heard about saving it to later, not later in the day, because then it'll keep you up at night, but later after you've had some protein and things like that. So is there a benefit to that? Is there truth in that?
Yeah. So I'm about to blow your mind. So one of the things about coffee is this. So I have a 25 plus year love affair with coffee. So she and I are never, ever breaking up. You know what I mean? I love the way coffee smells, the way it tastes when it's in my
I'm with
cup.
you on that. Okay, good.
Well, I sit down in the morning, my morning ritual, I'm reading, scripture, whatever it is, and I'm drinking coffee and I'm outside and I'm watching the sunrise. And it's just that's never going to change. However, the thing is this, the timing of when you drink your coffee does matter. Okay. So depending on when you get up in the morning, I'm a very early riser, so this might not apply to everyone, but you have to keep cortisol in mind. Cortisol should naturally be rising the minute we put our feet on the floor. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. For most women who might have been producing cortisol at night when they should be sleeping, they really struggle in the morning. Mornings are really hard. So their natural inclination is to grab coffee. And that is actually one of the worst things you can do for a variety of reasons. I'm sure you can imagine. We're going to forcibly spike cortisol with caffeine. It actually completely wrecks your blood sugar for the day and is one of the leading causes of belly fat because we're starting the day in that blood sugar dysregulated state because cortisol, when it spikes aggressively, it also wrecks our blood sugar. So there's that. Now, there's two things. For some women that kind of have that very structured day where they've got to get to the office, I recommend they have protein first before coffee, okay? Whether it's a shake or something, because you don't want to have coffee on an empty stomach for the reason I just explained. You're going to just send your blood sugar on a roller coaster and then completely crash. If not by 11, by 2 p.m. And then would eat more
Usually
coffee.
that's when I feel it.
Okay,
Yes.
that's the crash. So there's two things to recognize. For me, I'm already up very, very early. So by the time I have coffee, I've been awake for a while. You really want to understand when you get up and have coffee a couple hours later. So let's say you're somebody that wakes up at 6. Coffee is really best positioned at 9, somewhere between 9 and 10, because your cortisol's already coming down. It spikes to get us out of bed, put our feet on the floor, get going in the morning, but then it starts to decline. And that's the natural curve, cortisol curve, if you want to call it. There's a rise and a fall. So as it's starting to fall, if you have coffee later in the morning, best time to have it. You've already had food. You've already allowed cortisol to dip. So it's a great time to bring it back up with minimal effects. Okay.
Right.
The other thing about coffee is this. I usually try and have, especially for my patients that are really struggling, they've got multiple hormone imbalances that are working. I really try and have them actually swap out coffee for a while. And I did this myself. It had a profound effect, which is why I recommend it. Usually anything I recommend, I guinea pig because I have to kind of stand by whether or not it works. So you can do the green tea switch. Everybody probably just puked as I said that.
Oh, no.
There's many benefits. First of all, green tea is going to help us metabolize estrogen, which is usually a culprit to a lot of things that's kind of haywire. But the switch is this. One, you're going to get a steady kind of climb in energy when you have green tea. And then you've got all those polyphenols and antioxidants. So you've got some anti-carcinogenic things happening. There's a lot. And there's some coffees that do the same thing. But the problem is that those coffees that are like really good, that are good for you, are really expensive and no one's willing to buy them. So that's why I say, let's just swap it out and use green tea as our tool for a while. Most women can't believe how much better they feel from just a slow and steady climb rather than that spike. They're like, wow. I mean, talk about irritability versus not. Because when we drink coffee, it's zip bitty doodah, but then there is a crash that's going to be associated with that. So I find that swapping that out, if you've got a lot of hormone imbalances that you're trying to regulate, doing that for a little bit isn't a bad idea. It's really not.
Yeah.
You've got so much hormone balancing benefits to green tea, and then you can always go back to coffee.
So do you, if you still have a little bit of coffee a day, or that now that you've brought coffee back into your life, do you still use green tea as well? Like, do you drink both at different times during the day?
I do. I drink both. So I have green tea and I do have coffee. And I actually now I have green tea kind of with my lunch. So it's like a later
Okay.
morning and then that's it for the day. But when I was really kind of wrecked, I had green tea only for a while in the morning.
Right. Just to get it all kind of reset.
Yeah. 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 And we also put a lot of junk in our coffee and our
Mhm.
tea. And that's
True.
part of the problem. And I say junk, I use that term very loosely because, again, if you're drinking a really good quality coffee that is mold free and harvested the right way and doesn't have pesticides, you're going to get all the lovely benefits. But then we wreck that when we put in creamer and sugar. So
All the stuff that makes us want to drink it more anyway.
So that's why, if I can get women to start drinking black coffee, they're usually like, no way. I'm like, well, then rip
Yeah.
the Band-Aid off. Let's go to green tea.
Let's just go to green tea. So that would probably be me because I don't drink it black either.
Well, you might want to just give it a shot.
Try it out. Right. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of women that, I mean, even me for a while, kind of even like your story. I think, you kind of just felt like there's something wrong, there's something off. But even when you would go to the doctor or talk to someone about it, there wasn't anything that they could see that was wrong, especially because we weren't testing for hormone or insulin or different things like that. Just, oh, well, you're just tired because you're a mom. You're just this because of this. And you're just like, there's something that feels a little bit off. And I feel like there might be women that are kind of in that cycle, maybe not knowing that they are dealing with hormone issues, not sure necessarily where to turn or where to go, or just maybe not even realizing it. They just feel tired all the time or feel like something's off, but I don't know what it is. Are there signs that we should look for?
I would say there are a few pretty significant signs where if it's in your life right now, you've got some hormone imbalances. So the first one to go is your libido, right out the window. If that is gone, there's some work to be done, which is a good thing because then you know for sure that you have some hormone imbalances that are not working in your favor. And that in combination with the lack of energy and the brain fog and the fatigue. So those are the big four because I find that they all go together. It's like you kind of look back and go, I don't know what happened and I don't remember when, but all of a sudden I woke up and I feel like a slug. That is very, very significant. It says a lot. And if your OBGYN or your internist doesn't have functional medicine training, they're not really inclined to say, ding, 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 let's check a full hormone panel and a full thyroid panel. Instead, it's just going to be like, well, how old are you? We probably need hormone replacement therapy. Or, okay, so you're late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s. Okay, let's give you an antidepressant. It's just Band-Aids and lazy. If you really want to be honest, it's just lazy. It's like 2024. Let's get with the program. So my advice usually is to, one, work with someone in functional medicine because they're going to give you that whole person approach. And they've got the testing that's going to help you get to the root cause of why you feel the way you do. And then kind of go from there, but not get so overwhelmed because social media is insanely overwhelming. So there's a lot going on. It's great. We've brought a lot of, if I think back 20 years ago, not only was there no social media, but there was no discussions about this stuff. My mom didn't talk about this. I wasn't raised in a house that this stuff was discussed. So the fact that this is becoming so mainstream is wonderful, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there, and you have to be careful who you follow, who you trust, and who you actually absorb content from.
Yeah, that's good. Well, are there a couple of things that you would recommend? I mean, I feel like some of the takeaways have already been really big about, giving yourself those little moments during the day to rest and digest, to help with the vagus nerves. I think that's a really big one. A good takeaway, adding protein in, I feel like is something that was mentioned today. That was a good one. The coffee one. Maybe switching out with green tea. Is there something that you would like kind of overarchingly say, we're not fixing everything all at once. We're going to take it's a slow approach. It's a whole body, a whole health approach. But what are maybe a couple of key things, a couple of key takeaways that women today after listening could say, okay, I can do this. I can start implementing this now.
So for sure, nervous system regulation with a polyvagal exercise, then incorporate walking. A lot of women who already go to the gym, this is a no-brainer. I would actually, in the beginning of any healing process, advise any woman that's a gym person to kind of scale back, in the healing process of hormones. So if this is a non-gym person, walking is your new friend because this is one of the most effective tools to balance blood sugar. We cannot balance hormones if we don't get insulin right. And the other key to getting insulin right is getting enough protein. So I can't tell you, I would say easily within the last 5 years, 9 out of 10 women that I've worked with is not eating enough protein. And the problem with that is exponential because of 2 reasons. One, our muscle mass melts away after a certain age. It is literally melting. So if we're not eating enough to maintain, there's that. We need to also strength train down the line to keep building and maintaining. But if we're not consuming enough high quality protein, then we really are going to struggle balancing our hormones. All of the vegetarians and vegans get very upset with me, but I would much rather prefer women consumed animal proteins because of the amino acid profile. It's very complementary to hormone balance. And as a former vegetarian and vegan, I could tell you that my hormones were a wreck. It's really hard to get a supplement to match what you can get from animal proteins. And it's a lot easier. So when we talk about the landscape of overwhelm, it's a lot easier to look at certain pieces of animal protein and say, get that, get that, get that. Boom, I hit my number. So I would say for any woman who has maybe not even thinking about protein, maybe she eats an egg or two, not realizing that's only about 12 grams. If you can start getting 30 to 35 grams of protein in the morning, your blood sugar is going to magically change. It does for every single woman. So I personally eat a lot of meat, but I also supplement with grass-fed beef bone broth powder. So beef isolate powder is something that's been around for a while, but they've all been pretty gross. And I've tried them all. I've lit a bunch of money on fire. So there are a few that I would recommend. And that's for that woman that's like, I don't have the time in the morning. Okay, well then take a scoop of your beef isolate powder because you're going to get 21 grams of protein. Then throw a scoop of collagen in that. That's another sometimes 14 grams. I mean, your 35 is just
so you're getting your 30, 35. Yeah.
Yes. This is for, while I don't believe that protein supplementation in that way is a long-term solution by any stretch, because I really want women to get accustomed to getting and meeting their nutrient needs from the food they eat, because supplements are expensive. But for that woman that's really just kind of trying to crawl out of that overwhelm and gosh, I've been drinking coffee on an empty stomach. Well, let's do the shake first, then our coffee. Okay, then over time, maybe we can swap the coffee out. So stages of things, but nailing that protein. The protein is big. It's really big. It's the biggest one, I would say.
Yeah. It's something that I've been hearing a lot lately. And as I'm trying to work myself, I definitely have been that person. And I feel like I still am. That's not getting enough protein. But my goal has been for about 30 grams per meal. I do find that breakfast and lunch are the hardest, or even finding snacks, because that's where I've always just turned to, I mean, even to feel like it was healthier, an apple or something like that. But then it's like, okay, but there's no protein in this. Yeah. So I feel like those are the most difficult. I mean, we can cook chicken or we can cook steak. I feel like for dinner, we do try to have family dinners. So that's an area that it's easier for me to incorporate that or make sure I'm getting it. But it's those, what I feel like are smaller or shorter or quicker meals because of what's happening during the day.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of women too. The key for me, and I do about 40 grams of protein a meal, and I don't have snacks because my blood sugar very easily goes bananas. And you have to think every time you eat, you're spiking blood sugar, and insulin is doing something. So because insulin resistance is such a problem, especially with women, the more protein you can eat, you actually have that level of satiation that you wouldn't have otherwise. And that's where you don't have that hunger cue in between meals. I find that if women can start pushing that number north of 30 grams, like, wow, I really wasn't hungry. Okay, so wow, that was over 30 grams. I can't believe it's 1:00. It's time for lunch and I didn't want a snack. That is magical, that space, because the less times you spike blood sugar throughout the day, the more easier it is to balance all the other hormones, because insulin is one of the biggest beasts to kind of rein in. It will
Wow.
wreck everything else: progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. I can go down the list. And if we can get enough protein and feel satisfied so that we don't want to snack, that's the key. Then we can really sort of better manage our blood sugar. That's that magic spot. I call it metabolic flexibility, really, because when you can establish your comfort zone where you're like, wow, okay, I had 35 grams of protein this morning. That was easy. I felt satisfied and full, and then not hungry again till lunch. And I put that meal on repeat, had that again at lunch, wasn't hungry again till dinner. And then, okay, well, do that for a week. And then that was easy. Then do that for a month. Well, that was easy. Well, then by the time it comes around for you to go on vacation with your family, you've created that consistency to where you're now metabolically flexible so that you can have pizza and ice cream with your kids, because you don't want to be like that,
Right.
rigid. You got to be flexible. And especially, right, if we have daughters, I have a 5-year-old daughter. I don't want her to start thinking, mom is always eating something different and obsessed.
Right.
We're not going
Right.
there. So, that metabolic flexibility, that's that freedom spot, because I truly in that 80-20. We're tightening things up 80% of the time.
Yes.
20% of the time, you're flexible for vacations and treats and stuff like that.
But you've set yourself up for success from the habits that you've been building the rest of the time.
Yes.
I love that. So work at the maybe up to 40 grams of protein for those 3 meals. I've been working towards it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the 40 is really when I train, and when I don't, I'm probably 35. But you will start to notice in yourself if you are hungry. The cues will tell you and guide you. And that's key, because again, you really want to get to a point where you are so in tune with your body that you have these appointments with your doctors and you truly are the CEO of your hormone.
And you are able to talk about it.
Yes.
I love that you brought that up too, because I feel like we've kind of been so trained, and I want to say as moms, yes, because we're always focused on like them and their health and everyone else. But I feel like women in general, even just with work and all the other things, we kind of forget to listen to our bodies. We forget to listen, even as we go through our bodies go through all these cycles through the month. And, when your body's saying, okay, it's time to rest, or it's, there's some creativity, let's go, or you have some energy, let's do that, and just really even listening to our bodies, I think is a huge, huge thing. And so I love that you brought that up. I think
not be so tired.
Right. Because I don't always feel like I need a rest. I agree.
We're so tired. So we're so brain fogged that we forget. It's hard to listen to the cues when you're that exhausted and you can't think
You
straight.
probably can't listen to them. I think there was a time that I couldn't, and I'm just starting to now, or even starting just now. I feel like being able to realize kind of when my body is going into different cycles in times, even of the month and things like that. But I wasn't able to really feel or notice that before, because everything felt chaotic, or like you said, brain fog. It was we're just kind of going through the motions. So
Yeah.
I think this has been so helpful. It's been so helpful for me today, just chatting with you. And definitely I'm going to link in the show notes where everyone can find you on Instagram, because I find that your insights there are so helpful. Really, that helping women break out of the brain fog, helping us break out of the fatigue and get our energy back and our joy back. Really, when you have energy, I feel like life can be so much more joyful and joy-filled. So thank you so much again for joining us. This has been phenomenal. So everyone go follow Dr. LeBlanc. We're going to link it down below. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.